Hello, everyone. Welcome into another edition of To The Point podcast. We're doing well as we are getting hit with our first snowfall slash snowstorm of winter here in New Brunswick. I've been away for a few days, taking some time for myself, but I'm back full force this week. We're going to keep going here. Need a little recharge. Watch a lot of sports. That doesn't change. And what a weekend we had. And this podcast is going to be football. We're also going to talk some hockey. Big baseball news as the potential lockout is on the horizon. So we're seeing so many contracts get signed, which is just the polar opposite of what we're accustomed to in the sport of baseball, where contracts are drug out, but it's actually been like a free agent frenzy. And looking at this weekend, I mean, where do you start? Looking at the headlines, it was just crazy. For me, it was one of the best college football Saturdays I've ever watched. It was awesome. I watched from 1 o'clock to about 1:30 in the morning, and I was thoroughly entertained. And it was magnificent. I mean, you got, just Ohio State losing to Michigan, Coach Khaki Pants getting a win. You have Lincoln Riley leaving Oklahoma for USC, just hours after losing to the arch rival Oak State. You have Brendan Lemieux biting Brady Tkachuk. We're going to talk about that. You have Max Scherzer not staying out west, but signing with the New York Mets because they offer him this just boatloads of money. And the guy's still a stud, but he's 37 years old. Who the hell knows how that's going to go? Other hockey story. There's so many different headlines that you can take from this weekend. But as always on a Monday, we're going to start with the NFL. And it was a more predictable Sunday than in recent weeks. We saw predictably, the Minnesota Vikings come back down to earth and Kirk Cousins play like Kirk Cousins. We saw the Indianapolis Colts have a victory in their grasp, but you saw their offensive coordinator, Frank Reich, go complete Kyle Shanahan in the Super Bowl and just refuse to run the football into the last drive. Idiocy there. You saw the Cleveland Browns and the Baltimore Ravens play one of the ugliest football games I've seen. And somehow Baltimore's 8-3 and they're the best record in the AFC. How the hell does that make any sense? Aaron Rodgers continues to win in Green Bay despite his COVID toe, turf toe, whatever the hell injury it is. The Green Bay Packers win despite not having a starting left tackle and a starting right tackle. So if I look at this weekend and sum it up, and as you guys know, I like to find a theme, and it was tougher to find a theme this week. But I'm going to go with bad coaching. And that is, there's some really great coaches in the NFL, and there's some really porous ones. But I think there were some good coaches this week that just couldn't get their head out of their ass. Let's start with in Indianapolis. You come into this game 6-5. You have a week before your bye. You're at home against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's not an easy game. But you start the game, you get a fumble off Chris Godwin. You get a forced fumble. You get an interception off Tom Brady. You force him to fumble. That's 3 turnovers. It only tapped to be 10 points. That's got to be more than that against Tom Brady. But beyond that, defense is playing well. Darius Leonard the defense made enough plays to win the game. In this modern NFL, you can't hit the quarterback, especially Tom Brady. The flag's up before he's even in position to get hit. So you need to improvise. And you're up 24-14 in the third quarter, Frank Reich. And to this point, Carson Wentz had played a really good game. 3 touchdown passes. The first game he's thrown 3 touchdown passes since December of 2017. Oh, and in that game, That was the game he tore his ACL, and his career has gone down the toilet. But he's going to Jack Doyle. Michael Pittman Jr. had a tough game yesterday. He's usually sure-handed, the great receiver out of USC. But Wentz was dealing. But you look at the Colts offense. What has been the mark of their team? Offensive line and running back. They have one of the best offensive lines in football with Golinsky and Ryan Kelly and Eric Fisher. That's the strength. Braden Smith, that's the strength of their team with Jonathan Taylor, since Derrick Henry's out, the best all-purpose running back in the National Football League. After 3.5 quarters, he had 8 carries for 25 yards. And I get it that the Bucs were pretty good at stopping in the first couple drives, but that doesn't mean you just bail from the running game. That's your strength. I never have faith in Carson Wentz making the right decision. And that might be a cynic point of view, but I've seen it too many times when you have the game in your grasp. They're going down the field. They're chugging along. Third down conversion to Jack Doyle. It's about 8 minutes left in the third quarter. What happens? Shaq Barrett, forced fumble. That leads to a score, 24-21. Then what happens his next drive? Throws a stupid jump ball, and Antoine Winfield Jr. makes a great play. Don't get me wrong, the second-round pick who should have been a first-rounder out of the University of Minnesota a year ago. But 2 plays changed the game. He turned the ball over again, 3 turnovers in the game. And Indy should have won. And poor coaching and poor decision-making gave Tampa the win. Tom Brady didn't win this game. Tom Brady didn't play that well. Threw an interception. Got the ball punched out. He threw a really bad ball to Scotty Miller that got intercepted. He's been average the past couple weeks. Okay, you beat the Giants. Okay, bully for you. But I look at Frank Reich, and certain decisions can completely impact if you make the playoffs or if you don't. And I think this is a scenario where we're going to look back at the Indianapolis Colts and say, this cost you the postseason. This game very well could. Because if we look at the standings, it was not a good weekend for the Indianapolis Colts. Because teams they probably didn't expect to win did. Because you look at them right now. They are in the 10th seed in the AFC. They are behind the Chargers, Vegas, and Denver, all for that last spot. They're 6-6. Cleveland's right with them at 6-6. Pittsburgh 5-1. But yes, all those 3 teams are in the same division, but every time I say, well, Denver's done or Vegas is done, they beat the Cowboys. Denver beats the Chargers. And it's just this Carson Wentz stench that I just can't get over. I look at it and say, like, the Colts have the Texans. Okay, they should win that game. They should. And then they finally have their bye week. They come back, they have the Patriots. That's no gimme. Patriots are one of the best teams in football right now, period. Then they're at the Cardinals on Christmas Day. The Cardinals are only the best team in the NFL. You have to take advantage of games. They win yesterday. They win the next week. You're 8-6. You need to take one against the Cardinals or the Patriots. That's the position you're in. Now you got to win both. Then they play the Raiders. Well, you should win, but that doesn't mean you're going to win. And then they finish with the Jags, who stink. But it's just to this point, situational awareness and situational coaching is some of the most important you can do. Because at the end of the day, if you have talent, talent's going to prevail. But what did Bill Belichick do great for years and years in New England? He called his timeouts. He kept them till the end of the first half, where Tom Brady had a 2-minute drill. He could use his timeouts effectively. They got a touchdown. They deferred. They get the ball to start the second half. Oh, look, you're down 14. The game's over before you even know it. And you have Jonathan Taylor, an MVP favorite before this game, and you only go to him on the last drive, their last touchdown drive of the game. And I don't even give him credit for this because it's so idiotic. But Jonathan Taylor finished the game for 16 carries for 83 yards. That's 5 yards a carry. That's pretty good. That's half your first down yardage every damn play. But Carson Wentz threw the ball 44 times. They ran the ball 20. This mistake is so many teams. What did we see on Thanksgiving? The Cowboys went away from the run game. And I'm sure Cowboys fans listen to me, whoa, they should have won the game. The refs. I don't care. Did you win or did you lose? Period. Refs are going to make bad decisions. Did Sean Hockley's crew have a bad day? You bet. Are they heroes? You bet. But that's them breaks. And you got Tony Pollard. You got Ezekiel Elliott. You got Jonathan freaking Taylor. Run the football. Control the clock. To think, to even ponder. No, not Christian, ponder. Just to ponder the thought. Let's put the game in Carson Wentz's hands. That's like putting your faith in the Joker. He's a weapon of mass destruction in a very bad way. That's like banking on Kirk Cousins to come up big in a big moment. I'm betting on the house to win every bleeping time that happens. This is a frustrating. If you're a Colts fan, you should be pissed off today because you should have won that game yesterday. You're up 10, third quarter. You got control of the clock. You got the ball to start the second half, for Christ's sake, and you don't run it. They ran 8 plays on the opening drive of the second half, all pass plays. Okay, ball's moving down the field, great. But Shaq Barrett made a play. And then what happened? Antoine Minfield made a play. And then Carson Wentz throws another interception. And then it's just a spiraling effect. And teams aren't looking ahead in the moment. But like I listed off their schedule. Patriots, Cardinals, Raiders. It's not, you don't got Texans 6 times in the year. Play them next week. Then you got your Jags. Those are the only 2 gimmies you have on your schedule. But I just think Frank Reich was outcoached. And he know your strengths. The least you can do is know the strength of your team. And for God's sake, it is not Carson Wentz. And I really think teams have this identity crisis where it's not okay. It's not good enough to just play complimentary football. Well, why not? Having a strong running attack that leads to a strong pass game is football. Every quarterback benefits from a run game. What did the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have yesterday? Leonard Fournette ran for 100 yards, 4 scores, 3 on the ground. You don't think that helped Tom Brady? 100 yards on the ground. They haven't had that this year because he just throws the ball every play. But look, they get the win on the road in a tough environment. Maybe because you're not throwing it 50 times a game. Maybe. Let's go to another game. Green Bay. Green Bay is one of the best, most talented quarterbacks in the history of the National Football League. The Liar, a.k.a. Aaron Rodgers. That does not change the fact that the Green Bay Packers will run it down your throat because they have a bully of a back named A.J. Dillon, who's a man's man. And will he ever be more important than Aaron Rodgers? No. But what did the Packers do yesterday? They ran the ball 32 times. They threw the ball 45, but Aaron Rodgers is not Carson Wentz. But they still ran it 32 times. They only had A.J. Dillon only had a 3-yard average. Jonathan Taylor had 2 more yards per play than A.J. Dillon yesterday. And Randall Cobb had a good day. And Devontae Adams went over 100. And Aaron Rodgers made his plays that he had to. He threw 2 touchdown passes. Didn't turn the ball over. What has the LA Rams, who continue to infuriate me, what don't they do? They don't run the football. Matthew Stafford is a talented quarterback. He's a guy with a big arm. He's been lauded as one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL for years, but he never could win anything because he played in Detroit, the basement, the bargain bin of the NFL, of pro sports. Well, here's a little stat of the day for you. Aaron Rodgers has thrown 3 pick sixes in his entire career, meaning throws a pass, intercepted by the opposing team, return to the house. Matthew Stafford has done that 3 times in the last 3 games. He's a turnover machine. He's got Cooper Kupp or nothing. You saw his 2 touchdown passes yesterday. They're both on deep balls and in coverage. That was blown coverage. But he threw 3 touchdown passes yesterday. Okay. Did they win the game? That's the point here. Did they win? Now, the Rams D-line is a problem because they can't stop the run. But Stafford's also a problem because every game he puts. Green Bay won by 8 points yesterday. Well, Stafford gave them 7 because what did he do? Oh, yeah, threw a pick 6. So if he doesn't do that, we could hypothetically be going into overtime. And I look at this Rams team. They loaded up on pieces, on brand names. They were bargain bin shopping on Black Friday with Von Miller and OBJ and the rest of the crew that they brought in there. Well, the last 3 games, they've stunk. And Matthew Stafford, the last 3 games, looked like Detroit Lions Matthew Stafford. An overconfident underachiever. To me, that he's a very talented guy. But I can only say what I see. I'm not nicer to certain people just because I think they're a good guy. Good for you. You had a good relationship with Sean McVay. You're 7-4 now. You were 7-1. Got your ass kicked 3 weeks in a row. And he knows Lambeau, played there in Detroit his whole career, played there every year. Sure didn't look like it yesterday. But I mentioned coaching. Sean McVay. Don't put it in the hands of Stafford. Darrell Henderson and Sonny Michel have to give you something. Or you need to create an a run game with Van Jefferson, with OBJ, with reverses, with screens, short passing game that is a part of the running game. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers do this so well. Leonard Fournette averages 6 catches a game, but they're a yard past the line of scrimmage. That's part of their run game. And it's worked for them. Well, Rams do that because Stafford throwing the ball down the field that many times does not work. It just doesn't. Didn't work for him in Detroit. Doesn't work for him in LA. And I'm sure the mothership and certain people who love Matthew Stafford and think he's a great fantasy quarterback will come to his aid today. And I have a few friends that really like Matthew Stafford and think he's the second coming of Christ. Well, he's in a new scene. He's out of that wasteland. What's the problem now? He's got OBJ. He's got Cooper Kupp. He's got Tyler Higbee. He's got Aaron Donald. He's got Whitworth, one of the best left tackles in football. What's he need now? But the more I'm watching Green Bay, didn't love their defense yesterday. Didn't love it the week before as well in their loss to Minnesota. They What do? They give up the deep play. Stokes, their safety position is weak, but they are going to get some help. Jair Alexander will be back. If him and Stokes are on the opposite sides, I think they can handle that. But to me, Green Bay is asserting itself as the best team in the NFC. And when this season comes to a close and we're at the NFC Championship game, the last weekend in January, it wouldn't surprise me to see Green Bay be playing the Bucs again. Because I look and say, the Cardinals are a really good story. And they're the best record in football right now. And you know what? Kudos to them. 2 wins with Colt McCoy at quarterback. But I haven't seen them do it. Now there's questions about their head coach potentially wanting to coach the University of Oklahoma. So is he bought in? We'll see. Can Kyler come back? What's the state of his ankle? So they have question marks on the Arizona Cardinals. And I just mentioned the Rams. I thought the Rams were going to be a team to be reckoned with. Well, the past 3 weeks, they've played good teams and they've gotten their ass kicked in all 3. Point and the period. And they're not a physical team. When teams run the ball against them, they can't stop anything. They get bullied. And I think they're kind of a soft team. I think they kind of, OBJ, Stafford, they both kind of have similar traits. And I worry about them long-term. So I worry the Cowboys. Watch that game on Christmas. Anthony Brown, on Thanksgiving, 4 defensive pass interference calls. 4 in one game. The Cowboys have a formula. And this is like I'm beating a dead horse. The Dallas Cowboys, with Dak Prescott under center as their quarterback, are 29-0 in his career when they run the ball more than they pass the ball. They didn't run the ball more than they passed on Thursday. And what happened? They lost. Zeke, Tony Pollard, Cedric Wilson. Again, use the run game. Use it. They have an elite offensive line with Tyron Smith, with Lyle Collins, with Tyler Biadasz. You got guys that can do it. Why aren't you using it routinely? And I just think they make really stupid decisions. I don't trust their head coach. It was revealed today that he has COVID, so he's not going to be able to coach Thursday night in the Bayou against the Saints. I think that honestly gives him a better chance to win. I mean, honestly, I want him to get back healthy. I'm not saying that. I'm saying just I look at this game and say him not working the clock, him not calling timeouts, him not using motivational speeches is better off for the Cowboys. Yes, he won a Super Bowl in Green Bay. He also had Aaron Rodgers. He also had Jordy Nelson. He also had Clay Matthews Jr., the third. But again, just stupid coaching. As a coach, I think the worst thing you can do is not know your team. Not know it. And I looked yesterday at the Rams-Vikings game. And Kyle Shanahan's been criticized a ton. Deservedly so, in my opinion, in his career for, how he handled the Atlanta New England Super Bowl. Didn't run the ball when they're up big, cost them. Relying on Jimmy G in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. They lost that one. But San Fran has won 3 games in a row. And what have they done in those 3 games? They're running the football a ton. And Jimmy Garoppolo is a solid quarterback, but they're not asking him to do more than what he's capable of. Yesterday, Elijah Mitchell ran the ball 27 times for $133 and a tub. Deebo Samuel ran the ball 6 times for 66 yards, 2 touchdowns. They also had another 2 rush from Jeff Wilson Jr., Ayuk, and Garoppolo ran 3 times. They only threw 26 passes. He threw a touchdown pass in the game. But it just shows he knows Jimmy Garoppolo is a solid quarterback. He threw a bad interception in the first quarter, but he was clean the rest of the game. He made smart decisions. But what San Francisco, on the other side, Minnesota, Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson are a great combination. You could make the argument they're the best 1-2 combo in the NFL. But why are they so efficient? What do I love watching of this offense? Play action. You get Dalvin Cook, you get Alexander Mattison going early. You can use play action to your advantage. Jefferson goes over the top. You get a big play. When you get into the red zone, you go to Adam Thielen because that's just what you do. Adam Thielen caught 2 touchdowns yesterday. Over the last number of seasons, he leads the NFL in touchdowns. You look at this year, receiving touchdowns, he's tied for first with Cooper Kupp and Mike Evans. That's just what he does. But for San Francisco, who look like they were dead in the water, to crawl out of it, to get back to respectable level is really impressive to me, because they were a team that you just said, oh, well, San Francisco, they're in a tough division, including myself at points. But they play smart football. They use Deebo Samuel, who I think is their most important player. It's rare to say to a team that a wide receiver is the team's most important player. To me, Deebo Samuel is the most important player on San Francisco, more than Nick Bosa, more than Fred Warner. I just look at him. He can play wide receiver. He only had 1 catch yesterday, but he's top 5 in the NFL in receiving yards. But he's running the football. He had 6 carries, 66 yards, 2 touchdowns, including a 49-yarder. He's such a versatile weapon that you never know how they're going to employ him, and he's so hard to game plan for. And he's just a horse moving down the field. So this is an example of San Francisco just making smart decisions, smart reads. And you look why they won yesterday. They had 30 possession time. They had the ball for 37 minutes and 7 seconds. Minnesota only had it for 22 minutes and 53 seconds. 208 rushing yards to 67 for Minnesota. Minnesota, Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback. I'm not going great, but he's a good quarterback. But what you don't do is tell him to control the game, to throw the ball 45, 50 times. You want him to be an intermediate guy. He's a complimentary quarterback. He's a Carson Wentz. He's the guys we mentioned. He's better than Garoppolo, but I want to talk about a guy who probably was under the gun this year to really show that he can coach, get this team to the playoffs, at least be respectable. Well, Zach Taylor in Cincinnati is quietly having a very good season as a head coach. And we talk about mid-season's adjustments and looking at your team. Well, he knows he has Joe Burrow, who is one of the rising stars in the NFL, a great young quarterback out of LSU, Heisman Trophy winner. But you also got to know, okay, last year I had Joe Burrow. Our offensive line stunk, and he tore his ACL, MCL, and LCL. I don't want that to happen again because I want to coach here long-term, and I want him to be my quarterback. But you also look at your team and say, well, our defense has really improved. We went and got Sam Hubbard in the offseason. He's got a sack in 3 straight games. That'll work. You went and got Trey Hendrickson, who's top 3 in the NFL in sacks. You're getting pressure. You got a strong defense. But you also look and say, well, we got this guy named Joe Mixon in the backfield, who is a power guy, but also has great speed. Just a very competitive guy who will fight to the death. Well, maybe we can run Joe Mixon more. We can use him, and Joe Burrow becomes a complimentary piece at quarterback. Well, yesterday, Joe Mixon ran the ball 28 times for 165 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's his 3rd straight game with at least 2 touchdowns, tying a franchise record. Again, they ran the ball over 30 times. And Joe Burrow rushed for a touchdown. They gave the ball to Samaje Perine. And Joe Burrow only threw the ball 24 times for $190. And T. Higgins had 114 of that $190. What are they doing? They've won back-to-back games, and they sweep the season series against the Pittsburgh Steelers, where they dominate them in both meetings. But credit to Zach Taylor, who says, my offensive line is still not that great. It's getting pushed around. I worry about my quarterback's health. But what are you also thinking? Okay, this AFC is wide open. AFC West, yeah, who knows how that's going to finish. But I got a good enough team here. We got some talent. We got Jamar Chase. We got Joe Burrow. We got Joe Mixon. Trey Hendrickson's a stud. Maybe we can make the playoffs here. Cleveland's disappointed. Pittsburgh's falling off a cliff. We can do it in our division. Maybe we can win the division. Well, they're 7-4 now. They're in a playoff spot. In the AFC, they are the 5th seed. They play the Kansas City Chiefs if the season ended today. And Buffalo's right behind them. But Cincinnati is a team that continues to, they're young. They got a young coach, but I like the way they're moving. And they got a tough matchup at home against the Chargers next week, who laid an egg in Denver yesterday. But could they win that game? Sure. I think they could go in there and win, because the Chargers don't got a crazy atmosphere, and Cincinnati's just figured out their identity and how they win football games. And, before we get into the standings, things of that nature, the Patriots' dominance yesterday, the Pittsburgh Steelers have been a pillar of success for a number of years. Mike Tomlin, who I think is one of the best coaches in the NFL, who I would run through a brick wall for. He just knows how to motivate men. It's over in Pittsburgh. It's over. Through a couple weeks, they've won 3 in a row, and you're thinking, well, maybe they could hang on here. Does Pittsburgh still have some gas left in that tank? They don't. Their defense is battered. Their quarterback is over the hill. And this is real coming from me because I'm a Big Ben fan. He was a number of years ago, he was accused of, I think it was sexual misconduct or something of that nature. Charges were dropped. And that stayed with him his whole career. And that's not fair to me because, yeah, it's fair if it sticks with OJ. It's fair if it sticks with Michael Vick. But if you're not convicted of a crime, life shouldn't work where you are guilty until proven innocent, which he was. The charges were dropped. But yeah, that stain is stuck with him. And so, but I look at Pittsburgh. And unfortunately for Steelers fans, you've had a good run where you've been competitive for decades. But I really worry about this team. You still got Minka Fitzpatrick. You still have T.J. Watt, who's a stud. Cam Hayward's still a great player. But it's thin. On offense, I like Chase Claypool. I don't think he's a number 1 receiver, but I do think he's a talented guy. Deontay Johnson. I think Deontay Johnson's a big play receiver, but unfortunately, they don't have a quarterback that can make big plays right now. Najee Harris is a great running back, but their offensive line still stinks. They didn't address that in the offseason. That's at least how you stay competitive, where Big Ben is not leaned on to be the man. But the most important aspect of sports, you can have a great running in football. You can have a great running game. You can have a strong defense, which is imperative, as you know, listening to me. But you need a quarterback. You need a winning quarterback. And they don't have the answer behind Big Ben. It's not Mason Rudolph. It's not Dwayne Haskins, meaning likely they're going to have to go to the draft. And, I could see a scenario where next season, porn star Jimmy Garoppolo is the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers, or Jared Goff, Teddy Bridgewater, a bridge quarterback is there until they find their predecessor. And I just tell Steelers fans, you had a great run, but it's going to be some hurt for a while. But I do have faith in this organization to rebound quicker than some other organizations. I look at the Steelers. similarly as they do the Patriots. The New England Patriots lost Tom Brady. Well, the year after they lost Tom Brady, they went 7-9, and they had no weapons, and they had 8 players opt out of their defensive core last season. It's a pretty good season considering, but through 12 weeks this season, they sit at 8-4 atop the AFC East. They are legit, the Patriots. And that's you talk about smart coaching, smart personnel decisions. Bill Belichick had to take it on the chin, and he did something this offseason he never does. He spent more offseason money than any general manager, any organization in the history of pro football. He's built it through the draft. He's finding guys on the cheap. He didn't do that. He paid good money to Hunter Henry. He paid good money to Johnny Smith. He paid good money to Matt Judon, Adrian Phillips. But the proof is in the pudding. This team is a Super Bowl contender. They played the Tennessee Titans yesterday, who had nobody healthy, but it doesn't matter. They mollywhopped them. Mac Jones is a guy that's just not going to make big mistakes. He's going to be an efficient quarterback. He's going to do it his way, dink and dunk, things of that nature. But he plays his style, and it works for him. They have a good running attack. They get turnovers on defense. 2 interceptions in the red zone yesterday. They lead the NFL in takeaways. J.C. Jackson, 7 interceptions, most turnovers in the last 2 seasons in the NFL. That's their formula. Mac Jones is what Tom Brady was his first 2 to 3 seasons. Tom Brady was not Tom Brady right off the bat. He was a 6th-round pick out of Michigan, who Brian Greasy, who's now calling Monday Night Football, was starting over Tom Brady at Michigan. That Mac Jones is just a guy. He doesn't have a big arm, but he makes smart decisions. He'll go to Johnny Smith. He'll find Kendrick Bourne underneath, and this team just continues to find ways to win. And they got the Bills on Monday night, a week from tonight. Can't wait for that game. That is a must-see game. That's a great Monday Night Football game, opposed to Seattle-Washington football team tonight, which yet I'm still going to watch it, of course, because that's me. But is it something I'm dying to see? No, of course not. Nobody's dying to see the Washington football team. Washington football team fans aren't dying to see the Washington football team. So, no, there's still more football I want to get into. And I still want to talk, if I look at the games here, talk about the standings a little bit more. I want to talk about Cleveland and Baltimore, which was a complete train wreck. The Philadelphia Eagles just laying an egg, just being so the NFC, just the playoff picture and who the hell is going to make the playoffs because every team there stinks. But I want to pivot to baseball because we do have breaking news here, and that is that Robbie Ray, the American League Cy Young winner, formerly of the Toronto Blue Jays, is finalizing a 5-year, $115 million deal with the Seattle Mariners. And Jeff Passan of the Mothership is saying that his contract will have an opt-out after the 3rd season, so he is going to Seattle, but it's not guaranteed to be for 5 years, but it is possible. It's for $23 million a season. So he goes from making $8 million last year, winning a Cy Young, to now making 23. And just to counteract this breaking news, last evening, the Toronto Blue Jays went out and they signed Kevin Gausman, formerly of the Baltimore Orioles and the San Francisco Giants, to a 5-year deal worth similar money. And it's $22 million a season was the cap hit. I think I have it here. Wrote down some of the contracts for the last number of days that were really quite interesting to me. I'll find them here for you guys. But Robbie Ray is a Seattle Mariner. Kevin Gausman is a member of the Toronto Blue Jays. So, and I look at these two guys, and I do think they're very similar. And the reason I say that is they're both reclamation projects. And last offseason, Robbie Ray was the first player to sign. but it wasn't necessarily because Robbie Ray was this guy that everybody wanted. Yes, he's a lefty, and that's something that teams value because it's rare to get a great lefty pitcher. But he was coming off seasons in Arizona where he had, sub 4 ERAs, and he was really struggling. And a guy that was looking to rebound on his career. He lands in Toronto, gets the pitching coach, Pete Walker. It works out brilliantly. He wins a Cy Young. He nearly leads the team to the playoffs, and they fall just short, just a win short of the postseason. But nevertheless, a great season for him and the Blue Jays. Kevin Gausman, he goes to San Francisco from Baltimore, where he was released by the Baltimore Orioles. And you get released by Baltimore, it's not going well. He was struggling, but he goes to San Francisco, has the second best ERA in the National League. He was a dominant pitcher. He pitched game 2 of the season against the series against the Dodgers. He went 6 scoreless. So Gausman had one of those great seasons. But if you look past last season, he has a 4.30 career ERA, meaning he's a 4th, 5th starter in your rotation. So I look at the Mariners deal and I look at the Blue Jays deal. And I think they're both high-risk signings because you're getting guys that had a great contract season. Well, that's when players do their best work because they're motivated to do it. Gausman and Ray both knew, we want money. Let's do it right now. Yes, the pitching market was pretty good, but Justin Verlander stayed in Houston. Plus, he just had Tommy John, so that's going to affect his market. Max Scherzer, which we'll get to, signs with the Mets. But I think this is buyers beware because I don't begrudge the Toronto Blue Jays or the Seattle Mariners for signing these guys. But you're relying on a lot of, if you're looking at the vast majority of these guys' careers, it's inconsistent. Robbie Ray's been better than Kevin Gausman in totality, but neither of them has been an ace. And I think with both of these signings, you should not expect Gausman or Ray to be your ace. And that sounds very negative, sounds counterintuitive, because I'm 100% sure both teams are banking on their big free agent signing at pitcher to be their ace. But I think that's a stupid bet. I think it's betting on the Detroit Lions to win 4 games. I don't trust players after. If a player is great and he signs a big deal on a contract season, that's fine. Because what have you done your whole career? You balled out. Max Scherzer today signs 3 years for I think $130 with the Mets. Okay, it's a lot of cake. It's over $40 million. Steve Cohen wanted to get a big fish. He got one. But despite his age, 37, what do we know about Max Scherzer? He's won multiple Cy Youngs. He was second in the Cy Young voting last year. The guy has a career 2.36 ERA. He's the active leader in wins in Major League Baseball. Do you need me to go on? The guy's a walking, talking Hall of Famer. Robbie Ray and Kevin Gausman are reclamation projects. They're guys who are in a good situation. And you look at San Francisco and the Blue Jays for that matter, there were 2 teams that had stunk it up for a number of seasons. San Francisco, since 2015, had not made the playoffs in 2016, had not made it since. They got swept in 2016. Madison Bumgarner was ushered out. His career has never been the same. And again, their team has just been trying to find stability. The Toronto Blue Jays, after they tore it down after losing in 2016, they had made the playoffs either. So same season, these teams have not made the playoffs. And I think looking long-term, you'd say, well, the Blue Jays are in a better spot than the Giants. Sure. The Giants had a great season. They won 108 games, which is unbelievable. Beating the Dodgers for the division title, which nobody saw coming. But they're relying on Brandon Belt, on Brandon Crawford. Buster Posey's retired, so you have a huge hole at catcher. You're relying on a veteran-laden team to produce like they did last year. to bank on Anthony DeSclafani to pitch as well as he did last year. Dominic Leone to have a sub-2 ERA again this season out of the bullpen. It's unlikely. And I like betting on guys that have a proven track record. I would have sooner signed Justin Verlander or Max Scherzer than these two guys. And I know beggars can't be choosers because Scherzer or Verlander clearly weren't going to Seattle or they weren't going to Toronto. But 5 years to two guys that have not proven themselves to be consistent, to be a number one pitcher. One season does not prove that you're an ace. Just like in the NHL, you scoring 40 goals one time does not mean you're a 40-goal scorer. It means you got hot one year. Jeff O'Neill talks about this all the time. He scored 40 goals one season in the NHL. That doesn't mean he's a 40-goal scorer. Leon Draisaitl, Austin Matthews, these guys are 40-goal scorers because they do it consistently year over year. Brad Marchand. But I don't love these deals. And I think Scherzer is even a risk myself because you're giving him 3 years, 130. It's a lot of money. But again, I would have sooner signed Max Scherzer. For the Mets, who normally get no one, or if they do get a guy, they get a guy like Robinson Cano, and in his 12-year deal, he tests positives for PEDs twice. So it's basically you're basically signing Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens in two different stints. So I credit these organizations for spending. That's one thing I will do. The Mariners are been dirt cheap. They've made the playoffs in forever. The Blue Jays, they've been known to be a cheaper team. You know, they go get a Steven Matz. They go get a Robbie Ray. And it worked out for them last year, but it didn't push them into the playoffs. And I don't begrudge guys like Gausman, like Ray for taking the money because this is your payday. You had a great season. The lockout's likely to start on Wednesday. So Scott Boras is using that leverage to get his clients a boatload of money and in return get himself a handsome check as well down the line here. But for these teams like Texas, for Seattle, I've seen the Los Angeles Angels give out big money in off seasons to guys like Anthony Rendon, to just guys that you think are going to be great. And it just, Jose Quintana the last couple of years, and it just doesn't work. And I could see the same thing happening in Seattle where they have the opt-out after the 3 years, but it's a player option. So if Robbie Ray stinks it up and he's like, well, I'll never make that money in the last 2 years, he's going to opt in and you're stuck paying him regardless. So it's not a negative Nancy to me. This is just how I see the situation. I don't see this working out as well as clearly the team thinks it's going to work out. I very well could be wrong, but I look at the situation and say, I don't think it's ideal for either team to be giving out this much money to guys that had a great contract season. I've seen it too many times in sports where you give a guy a great contract season deal, he comes back and he's a gas can the next season. The Toronto Blue Jays lost their stud pitcher, their Cy Young winner. They also lost Marcus Semien, who was third in MVP voting this year. He is going to Texas. He signed a 7-year, $175 million deal. That's $25 million per season. So he leaves the Blue Jays organization. And I credit the Blue Jays. Number one, Texas. I don't think Simeon's going to be worth the money, but he had a great season. He found it in Toronto. He was playing for $18 million on a player option just to prove a deal. And you know what? He balled out last year. Third in MVP voting. He accepted his role, not playing shortstop because Bo Bichette was playing there. He hit over 40 bombs. He did everything you'd want him to do. He'd be second MVP if he wasn't on the same team with Vladdy Guerrero Jr. But I credit Toronto in a sense because Semien was never going to return there because I think he wants to be a shortstop and he'll likely get that opportunity in Texas because Elvis Andrus, who had played shortstop forever for Texas, is no longer there. So they have a hole. And, reporting from Passan from the mothership and guys like John Heyman is that teams like Texas want to spend a lot of money here. They want to be competitive again. I mentioned the Blue Jays. Well, Texas hasn't been really competitive since those Blue Jay series with Rougned Odor and since, the Adrian Beltre days and Sam Dyson. This team's just been a bottom of the barn team. They finished last in their division. They're not a competitive ball club. So adding Semien gives them some cachet for sure, but they're still missing a lot of pieces. And again, Semien's a shortstop. I think he could be a second baseman because I wouldn't be surprised if you see the Texas Rangers go out there and sign a Trevor Story, who is obviously played in Colorado his first number of years in his career. And I think Trevor Story is a guy that is a great shortstop. He could be a very, very good player there in Texas. So getting that 1-2 punch on the roster, I think, is a possibility for these Rangers. And I mean, that's my next big signing. Where does Trevor Story go? Because Scherzer's off the board. You got Robbie Ray. You got, Semien, Corey Kluber, who spent 1 year with the Yankees. He's staying in the division. He's going to the Tampa Bay Rays for $7 million a year. So he's staying, after, like I said, a lackluster year. Byron Buxton re-signs in Minnesota for 7 years, $100 million. He's still a Minnesota Twin. So lots of interesting signings. But again, where does Trevor Story go? Where do these other free agents go? And do they get done before Wednesday? That's my guess that they will, because I wouldn't be surprised if they get done, because teams, they want to avoid that lockout. They want to get guaranteed deals. But you look, you got Cole Calhoun, you got Corey Seager out there, you got Clayton Kershaw. Where does Clayton Kershaw go? Does he find a home? And does Texas potentially get Kershaw? He's he's a guy that I think could pitch there. You got Robbie Ray. If I'm Texas, I go all in here. I mean, I don't love signing. I'll be real honest. I don't love signing Clayton Kershaw because he's a guy that is injury prone. He is always injured, and that's the biggest worry with him. Obviously, he's one of the greatest pitchers in the history of the game. But where does he go? Does Trevor Story? Does he go back to Colorado? Does he find a new home elsewhere? There's still lots to be decided, and I'll be interested to see where this goes, because Major League Baseball is not going to slow down. I think players are going to do their best to get in, we'll see where this goes. But it's certainly interesting as we move forward here in baseball, where these potential other huge names end up. And did the LA Dodgers retain Kershaw or Seager? Do either of them, they just lost Scherzer, do either of them go back? That's another. We also got Freddie Freeman out there as well, who, Alex Anthopoulos said after they won the World Series, he wanted to keep Freddie Freeman in-house, but will he be able to do it is the big thing here. So baseball has been heating up, great to see, and we'll continue to touch on it here in the podcast as we move forward, because it will continue to roll as we progress. Let's pivot to hockey before we get back to football and wrap. Montreal Canadiens made wholesale changes yesterday. Jeff Molson, the owner of the Montreal Canadiens, fired general manager Marc Bergevin, AGM Trevor Timmins, Scott Mellenby. AGM Scott Mellenby resigned on Saturday, so clearly he wanted to be in the running for the president's job. He was informed he was not, so he left on his own terms. They also fired VP of Comms Paul Wilson. So cleaning house after Marc Bergevin had been in Montreal for close to a decade. And before I get into where they're going to go, and, later in the week on the podcast on Wednesday, myself, Rankin Campbell, and Cole McDonald are going to have a roundtable. We're going to talk about Montreal in depth. We're also going to talk about Vancouver. Where should these teams go? Potential hires, things of that nature. But I think Marc Bergevin, even though he had a 6-15-2 start, he deserves a ton of credit for what he's done in Montreal. And I think this is just a fact here. What he accomplished getting to a Stanley Cup final, there's a team in the province of Ontario that would kill half their fan base to achieve that goal. And I'm not talking about the Ottawa Senators. So Marc Bergevin deserves a lot of credit for that. You can't take that away from him. Did he make some bad signings over the course of his tenure there. Yes. Brendan Gallagher's term on that deal is not going to get any better to me. Carey Price, it's a long deal. Again, you can't predict his mental health and things like that, but that doesn't look good. I do think PK Subban for Shea Weber was a good deal. I said that the second it was done. I remember I was ridiculed for it. Well, I think I've been proven right because Subban, all he's doing in New Jersey is slew-footing people. Shea Weber helped guide the Montreal Canadiens to a Stanley Cup final. But nevertheless, all that being said, Philip Deneau departed. I wouldn't have signed him for $6 million, so I can't fault Marc Bergevin for that. Max Domi trade, there's a lot there. We'll do a deep dive on Wednesday. But I wanted to touch on today's report. And, I'll just make some noise, some news, I guess. I forgot to break that. Montreal hired Jeff Gorton as the president of their team. And he was the former GM in New York. He was fired this offseason and Chris Drury replaced him. But he was in New York. He led that turnaround where they went through the rebuild. He sent out the letter with John Davidson. And I think he had a really successful tenure there, and he deserves a ton of credit for where that team is now. So he knows how to build a team. But nevertheless, that's good. But this report today, and Montreal has an identity problem, in my opinion. And I'm not talking about on the ice. I think it's off the ice. The Montreal Canadiens forever have been restricted in who they hire because it's, to my knowledge, and I could be wrong, and if you're a Montreal Canadiens fan, let me know, but I think this is just common knowledge. They need to hire a French-speaking head coach and a French-speaking general manager. Now, before people get angry with me for I'm not saying you shouldn't hire French-speaking head coaches or general managers. Pittsburgh had Michel Therrien as their head coach. You could hardly understand his English. That's fine. You saw, guys, there's been plenty of French people. Patrick Waugh has coached there's plenty of French coaches. My problem with the Montreal philosophy is it has to be French. He has to be French. Well, that bottles you in so much because, okay, this is not groundbreaking news. French is not the universal language. It's English. And if I'm a fan, I'd rather have a guy who speaks English that gets me wins than a French guy that's getting me to lose every night. And to read this today, and I like him. I really liked him as a player, but this is really troubling to me. Eric Engels, who I really don't like, just to point out, I think he's a Montreal homer, and he works for Sportsnet, so he's not even, kissing the Maple Leafs ass, but he loves to kiss Montreal ass. He tweeted, based on what I've been told, Daniel Briere is very high up on the list of candidates being considered for GM of the Canadiens. Well, Danny Briere currently serves as the president and governor of the ECHL's Maine Mariners. So Danny Briere has not been a GM in the American Hockey League. He's not been an AGM in the American Hockey League. He's not been an AGM in the National Hockey League. He has no experience of doing this in the AHL or NHL level, Europe, ECHL. He high up on the list. This is so troubling to me. This would be like the Vancouver Canucks hiring the Sedin twins as their president. It's just stupid. Danny Briere has no experience. And let's just be honest here. The only reason he's being considered is because he's French. That's it. It's that simple. It really is. It's that simple. And I think it's asinine that a guy who has no experience, who feels like he was just playing 5 days ago, is now considered. And the name thrown out for head coach, because I don't know what's going to happen with Dom Ducharme, but all I know is when a president or a GM comes in, they like to hire their own guy. And Jeff Molson's not a cheapo, so he's not going to be afraid to fire a head coach. And it seems like the Montreal Canadiens have completely lost faith in Dominic Ducharme, and I'm talking about the players. So I don't think that'd be a surprise if he's gone this year either. And you know who they're going to hire. You just know it. And that's going to be Patrick Roy. And I hate that too. I hate it. Because what do we know about Patrick Roy? I think he's hard-nosed, one of the best goaltenders of all time. But what do we also know? Patrick Roy quits when it gets tough. What do you do in Colorado? Well, you've been coaching here for a while, and we're not winning anything. So we're going to do a little rebuild, but we're going to keep you on as head coach. But we're going to be a quick rebuild. We're going to get guys like Nathan McKinnon, guys like Mikko Rantanen. Keep Gabe Landeskog, keep our core, but we're retooling. What do? We quit. Quit on the job. First of all, if you quit as a head coach, I don't know how you get another job. And I'm just looking at his body of work. He's been head coach and GM of one of the most attractive landing spots in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, and that's Quebec. When Euros come over, they want to play in the Maritimes or they want to play in Quebec. They're not going to Baie-Comeau. And he has not won a President's Trophy since 2006. He can't win in the Junior League. You expect him to go coach the Montreal Canadiens with his temper and to be successful? I don't. But I just think it's baffling to me what if it is Danny Briere, Jeff Gorton. I just have a couple words of advice for you. We've never met, probably never will. You cannot be a puppet. Pierre Dorion is a puppet for Eugene Melnyk. And you cannot be a mouthpiece. You cannot just be a Charlie Montoyo manager in the Toronto Blue Jays organization where you just do whatever Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro says. You need to have a set of balls. You know damn well hiring Danny Briere as your GM is not a smart decision. It just isn't. Brian Burke became president. He didn't hire some schlum off the street. He didn't hire a player that played for the Penguins before or was a great guy from the Pennsylvania. He didn't hire Scott Hartnell to GM the Pittsburgh Penguins. He brought in a guy with experience, a guy who did it in Philly, who worked out with Carter Hart. He thought he did it the right way. And Ron Hextall, who had made the playoffs, he had paved the way. He worked in the LA organization as an AGM and won a Stanley Cup behind Dean Lombardi. He worked to get to this position. Danny Briere should not be able to jump the shark, so to speak, to get this position just because he speaks French. And if Montreal Canadiens fans really feel like Danny Briere is the best hire, then my only answer is you need to get your head out of your ass and say, okay, then clearly to you, language is more important than winning. Language would never be more important to me than winning. If I was a fan of the Florida Panthers and they hired a coach and he didn't speak English, I wouldn't give a shit if we won a Stanley Cup. I wouldn't care. He could be saying anything. Back to just going off about God knows what. Did you win last night? Great. We just got through the second round of the playoffs with Igor behind the bench. Great. Could care less. But I'm fine if you go through your decisions and you say, he's our best candidate. We're most impressed with him. We like his ideas. We think he's creative. He's innovative. Let's hire him. No problem. I think that's smart. But to hire a guy and you go through, okay, well, is he the most qualified? No. Is he most creative? No. Well, we like this English guy. He's really smart over there. Or this guy from Ukraine. Really, he's got some smart ideas. But you know what? Danny Briere played for Montreal. Oh, did he? Yeah, he did. Oh, really? End of his career. Yeah. Did I mention he speaks French? Oh, yeah, he's hired. That's why you've been failing for so long. It's stupid. And in hiring a guy who's not the most qualified, just because he speaks French, it's just saying, well, to the media, hey, RDS, we care about you more than we care about the product. We would like to put a shitty product on the ice so you can criticize us in English and French this year. How's that? But Danny Briere can answer your questions. Yay! Stupid. Anyway. Ottawa Senators. Another team that seems to, another bilingual city, another great city in Canada. Matt Murray was placed on waivers on Saturday morning by the Ottawa Senators. Just a season and change into a 4-year deal he signed with the Ottawa Senators with $6.125 million guaranteed per season. First of all, Matt Murray has been a disaster this season. And it started from day one. He was supposed to start opening night, but he had some illness or some injury. And he went through that. But there's been 3 times this year where he's been supposed to start the day of a game, and then he just can't. And we don't really know why. It says, oh, Matt Murray can't go. Okay, well, why isn't he going? Well, we really don't know. The media, he's got a nick. Well, I know it's not, what it used to be, where guys fought through injuries tooth and nail. They're going to start. And I realize that era has shifted. But to me, Matt Murray he's a wet noodle. He's soft. And again, this was I said I hated the sign and trade from day one because Matt Murray was a guy that benefited from playing for a really good team. And that's the Pittsburgh Penguins. And he's a guy that was playing in Pittsburgh and his numbers were inflating as the team got worse. Well, you're playing on a team that's still playoff caliber, but your numbers stink. You expect those to improve when you go to one of the worst teams in the NHL? That makes a lot of sense. And I'm not saying anything groundbreaking here. This is just common sense. I mean, I guess not, but you look at Ottawa this year, you expected them to take a jump. They are 4-14-1. They have 9 points. That's just absolutely pathetic. And Matt Murray is 0-5 with a .327 goals against average and an .890 save percentage. I don't know what to say. He had a .338 goals against last year, .893 save percentage in 27 games. In his career, he's not started more than 50. But the last 3 seasons, his save percentage has gone down every year. 2019-20, .899. 2020-20, 2021, .893, and then .890 this season. It continues to get worse, and he just seems like he doesn't care. That's the worst thing you can have on a team. Obviously, Ottawa's going to have to eat that money. Nobody's taking that contract because he's, number one, he's a cancer, and he just doesn't show up for games. And so you're not getting rid of that. You're stuck with that dead heap. But if I'm Ottawa, your season's over. I don't know what's going to happen with DJ Smith. I think it's ridiculous if he gets fired and Pierre Dorion keeps his job again when this rebuild was supposed to take place. You're supposed to get better. But I look at them and say, you don't like to spend money, but buying out Matt Murray this offseason is a must because the guy, he's not your goalie of the future. Philip Gustafson, I think, can be a really good goalie, but you just need to throw some decent players in front of him. It can't just be, the way their playing style is terrible. Arizona is better than the Ottawa Senators. That's how pathetic they are. 9 points. Arizona has 10. Oh, my God. But Matt Murray, you're in the minors. I wouldn't expect to be called up anytime soon. You and Evander Kane can have a good time collecting checks down there and playing for the HL. And I'll finish up the hockey conversation. We'll talk about more and more. I want to talk about Kyle Connor, his amazing season, Ryan Hartman, Mikko Koskinen, obviously Alex Ovechkin. But Saturday night, there was an incident. End of the LA Kings Ottawa Senators game where Ottawa Senators lose. No surprise there. Brendan Lemieux was accused of biting Brady Tkachuk more than one time. Brady Tkachuk got up, taking his glove off, showing his hand was bloodied. Brendan Lemieux should be suspended for 10 games plus. Biting somebody, to me, is like spitting in somebody's face. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. It's intolerable before the pandemic with saliva and all that shit. But biting, it's the lowest form you can show somebody. You bite somebody, that puts you in the same conversation with an Alex Burrows, a rat type figure. And this is just not acceptable. The NHL needs to lay down the law. I think the last biting incident was in 2013 or something like that. It's almost a decade. It was a 2-game suspension. Well, it looked like he bit him more than once. And this is the Lemieux. Remember Claude? He was a rat type player as well. And to me, Brendan Lemieux crossed the line. The NHL offered him to have an in-person hearing, which means it could be more than 5 games. To me, I'd hit him with a 10 because you can't let this happen. The NHL dropped the ball when they didn't suspend or do anything to Brad Marchand after he licked Uncle Leo Komarov. That shouldn't have been tolerated. That was disgusting. This is how you make up for it. You fucked up then. Hammer Brendan Lemieux. And also doesn't hurt the NHL the fact that Brendan Lemieux is a 4th-line player. And I think we'll see today that he's gone for a long period of time because, again, you have to set a precedent that this is just not tolerated. Your league is better than this. You don't want your product to be, well, the hockey's, the players are great, the action's fun, but we have this guy licking people and biting people. And I love Brady Tkachuk. I love the Tkachuk family, the way they play hockey. So I support them 100%. But I hope the next game that Lemieux is eligible to play against either of these teams, that we see Brady or Matthew take advantage, do what he has to do. Because I believe LA might play the Kings this week, which is unfortunate because I think he'll be suspended for that game. But if he misses a number of them and he comes back and you see LA play Ottawa later in the year, play Calgary later in the season, I want to see that brawl because I want to see Matthew go at him, see what happens. Because no player in the NHL should respect Brendan Lemieux. Because it's a terrible behavior. It makes your product look bad. It makes it look really bad on you as a league that you have a player that's doing this. It's disgusting. So we'll see where this goes, but I wouldn't be surprised the next time you see Tkachuk play Brendan Lemieux, you see them square up and you see them fight because number one, he loves his brother. He's going to stick up for him. But 2, I think you just tell the whole league, okay, enough. This is not happening. You're not licking me, you piece of shit. And, you just let that be known right away that this is not happening with me. You're not going to bite me, the next player. You're going to take a 2. If you even try this, I'm going to 2-hand you across the face. See how you like that. But as I scroll through trying to find the game where the Flames played the Kings, because I want to see that more than anything, to see what kind of interaction these two have, but I don't see it anytime soon after this week, which is unfortunate because it would have been fun to see these two do battle, but we'll have to wait and see. But again, Brendan Lemieux, I think it should be a 10-game suspension, and I get more if you want NHL, but 10 for me, and that's just my opinion on it. We're going to wait more baseball news. Again, football tonight. We'll also touch on I'm going to leave the college football conversation to tomorrow. I'm going to talk a lot about the games. Matt Wright's going to join me later in the week, so we'll tee up next weekend's conference championship games as well. But like I said, Cole McDonald and Rankin Campbell will join me Wednesday evening. Matt Wright will join me on on Thursday evening, and we'll have a double dose of podcast tomorrow where I recap tonight's actions, other news around the sports world, and then Seamus will join me for our regular scheduled Breaking Bad podcast as well. So fun show today. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't bite anybody tonight, but as always, stay healthy, stay safe, and enjoy the storm, and we'll talk soon.